Welcome. We're very excited to be here. This session is Triggers for Admins, a 5-step framework for creating triggers. It's geared towards Salesforce admins who have never written any code in any programming language and are trying to figure out just how to get started. So before we dive in, I'm curious, can I see a show of hands from people who have never written any code in Salesforce before? Okay, most of you. Great. And then a show of hands, people who have maybe a specific problem that you're trying to solve that you think you need code for? So a few people, okay. And then finally, a show of hands from people who are here just because you want to learn what code is and you want to expand your skill set. Everybody, excellent.
Great.
So the good news is that all of you are in the right place. What you'll get out of today's session is practical steps for how to get started with Apex, some resources for how to continue once you leave here, and finally, the confidence to get in there and try it and to start coding. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy our production of Triggers for Admins, a play in 5 acts. Our production features Ashima Saigal.
Hi, I'm Ashima, founder of Database Sherpa, and I am certified. Well, I'm a certified Salesforce admin and developer, but I am certified. I enjoy teaching other people about using Salesforce and programming from a compassionate and loving mindset. And I love Veronica.
Thanks, Ashima. Whoop, let's go back.
And you guys
There
were
we
patient
go.
with us with the clicker.
Yeah, clicker, new clicker. I'm Veronica Beck. I'm a senior consultant and certified Force.com developer. I work at a small Salesforce consulting firm in Seattle called Bigger Boat Consulting. I'm also a former ESL teacher and a former yoga teacher, and I just love getting into beginner's mindset and remembering what it was like to first get started. So, the setting for our play is a yoga studio that offers workshops. They track their workshops with Salesforce campaigns, and they track the people they invite with campaign members. They're finding that the standard campaign member statuses of sent and responded are not what they need. They want their own custom campaign member statuses, but it's a pain to have to add them every time. So Veronica has been asked by the studio manager to find a solution to this problem. To get the most out of this production, we have some suggestions for you. First, breathe. You can do it. Everyone has to start somewhere, and this is a great place to start. Next, see if you can start to replace any feelings that you have of trepidation or anxiety with a sense of curiosity and exploration. If you're the kind of person who tends to think, oh no, what if I get it wrong? Don't worry, you will, and that's okay. You're not going to break Salesforce. And you are going to learn a lot along the way. So if you can focus on the learning and the adventure of it, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable. Also know that this is not going to happen overnight. Learning to code takes time. It takes some practice, and that's okay. Little by little, you will get there. Finally, remember that you are not alone. There are wonderful people in the Salesforce community who are generous with their time and help, and there's lots of resources to help you out along the way. So our play is in 5 acts. Act 1, set up your environment, or where do I write code? Act 2, gather your resources, get some help. Act 3, clarify your requirements. What am I doing again? Act 4, code and test. Act 5, finalize and launch. To begin our production, we're going to start by taking 3 deep breaths to get transported to the yoga studio. So really, do this with us. Ready? Take a deep breath in. And exhale. And again, inhale. And exhale. And last one, inhale. And exhale.
The scene. Ashima and Veronica met at Dreamforce last year. Veronica knows that she is going to need help, so she set up a meeting to talk about her needs. They meet via Google Hangout.
Ashima, I have this Salesforce thing I'm trying to do. I want to have some different campaign member statuses added every time we create a new campaign. So I thought that maybe I could do it with a workflow rule, but it looks like that's not going to work. So I think I'm going to need to write a trigger, but I have no idea how to get started. I don't even know where in Salesforce I would write code, let alone what to write. Can you help me out?
Absolutely, Veronica. But before we talk coding, let's talk about how to set up your environment to get started. There are two options. First, you can create a developer org. This is free, and you can use as many as you want. It is the Enterprise Edition, and you get 2 users with it. Now, the terms of use are you're not supposed to run your business off of this. This is really just a place for you to practice and learn. And this is really a great place to start if you're in that kind of camp of I want to expand my skills. And you don't have an immediate need to code for your organization. So it's a really great place to learn and grow. No one else will be in there. And so you can do what you want and experiment. Even if you do have an immediate business need, this is a great place to learn without fear of destroying anything. Second, you can create a sandbox, which is a copy of your production and database minus all the data. All your customizations are there. Custom objects, workflows, custom fields, all the customizations. The advantage is that you're working in a copy of the environment you eventually want to deploy to. So if you need to work with any customizations, it's already set up. Based on your edition of Salesforce, you may or may not have a sandbox available to you. You, as a nonprofit, you do have a few sandboxes, so that might be the best place for you to work.
Okay, let's back up a second. You said deploy. What does that mean?
It means moving your code from the testing environment to a live production environment. But that's at the end of the process. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
So now, once you have your environment set up, you want to begin to play around. I suggest that you start with one of the sandboxes available, log into your sandbox to begin writing your code. Start by going to Setup, then find the object where you want to have the trigger, and then click on Triggers.
So you said go to the object where I want to have my trigger. So do you mean the campaign member?
No, let's think about it for a second. We want to create a campaign member status, but when do we want to add them?
When we add a new campaign.
Okay, so then when would you want to create the trigger?
Oh, on the campaign, right? Because it's like a workflow rule. I want the trigger code to run when a campaign is created, so I would go to the campaign.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, now to write your code, you click on the trigger and click the New button. The code area opens up, and you can begin writing.
Okay, well, at least I know where to start.
Yes, and just so you know, doing your coding right here in Salesforce is a quick and easy way to get started. But once you get more familiar with how everything works, you might also want to check out some of the other tools people use to write code. For example, the Salesforce Developer Console or Eclipse. Those tools offer some great functionality, but there is a learning curve with them. So for now, let's stick to doing our coding from right here within Salesforce.
Okay, I'm kind of nervous about this. It seems like there's a lot to learn.
There is, and it's okay to be nervous, Veronica. So I'll help you, and there are a lot of resources available. So let's look at some of those together.
Okay, sounds good.
So a great place to start is the sfdc99.com site, which is coding for the 99% of us, meaning all of us who aren't programmers. This site was written by David Liu, a self-taught Google engineer who started out as a Salesforce admin, Veronica, just like you. So he's hosting a session Wednesday at 11 a.m. Anyone can learn code, Apex code. This site contains a beginning tutorial that will take you step by step through the process of writing code, all the syntax you need, plus he's really funny.
Awesome.
Also, just added a newbie forum where you can ask any coding questions you have. It's really an amazing resource.
Wow, I am definitely going to spend a lot of time on that website.
Totally. But that's not all. There's also great resources just for nonprofits called the Power of Us Hub. Join and look at that and join the Nonprofit Developer Chatter group.
Oh, yeah, I am in the Power of Us Hub, but I didn't realize there was a developer group for nonprofits. That's great.
Yeah, and I also recommend the Success Community, user groups, developer user groups, and to network here at Dreamforce. The more you get clear in your mind about, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Back up. There are a lot of folks willing to help along with me.
I am really glad to know about all these resources. Thanks.
Veronica, as a next step, go ask your yoga studio manager the specific needs for campaigns and campaign members. The more you can get clear in your own mind about what it is you're trying to do, the better prepared you will be to write the code, ask relevant questions, and get help.
Great idea. I'm going to do that. Thank you for your help. Namaste.
Namaste.
The setting for Act 3. Veronica is in the yoga studio with the yoga studio manager, Celeste, who is being played by Ashima.
Namaste, Veronica. How are you today?
Namaste, Celeste. I'm well. I wanted to ask you about the issue you mentioned with tracking our workshops in Salesforce. Can you explain to me again what's going on?
Yes, of course. So we're trying to track who's coming to our trainings. I want to be able to see who's signing up but not showing up. It seems to be a problem lately. I think we need to start charging people ahead of time, but I'm having a hard time tracking it. Zola and Ed are entering the data, but they keep forgetting to add the right statuses so we can mark someone as a no-show.
Well, I made a template campaign for them that I showed them how to clone. Isn't that working?
They said they can never find it or they forget to use it, and it's kind of driving me crazy.
Okay, so you want a way for those statuses to be there without anyone having to manually go in and create them.
Yes, that would be great.
And just to be clear, we're talking about the campaign member statuses, right?
I don't know what you call them. I just need a way to track who shows up and who doesn't.
Okay.
Oh, and I want to know who's invited in the first place, who lets us know they're coming, and who actually came, along with who's coming but didn't show.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe it would work to have these statuses added that you can use. So invited, accepted, attended, and no show?
Yes.
Do you want these new statuses whenever Zola or Etta enters a new campaign?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I think I have it.
So, I know it's really easy to do stuff in Salesforce, so can you get this done in a week?
Well, it's going to involve some actual coding, like programming, and I haven't done that before, so I'm going to need to take some time to learn it. The good news is it's a great investment, and it'll be a great thing for me to learn, and it will help us out in the long run.
Okay, do what you have to do.
Okay. Oh, wait, one more question. So this is only for trainings and workshops, right? It's not for our mailings that we send out?
Just the workshops.
Okay, got it.
Setting. Veronica and Ashima meet on Google Hangout again.
Okay, Ashima, so I talked to my studio manager, and I think I know what needs to happen now. So what's next? How do I figure out how to write the trigger?
Well, before I write actual code, I write something called pseudocode, which is writing out at a high level in English what the code needs to do. It helps me clarify my thoughts on how to structure and code.
Can you show me what you mean?
Sure. Here's what some pseudocode might look like for your trigger. So when a campaign is inserted, check to see if it's a workshop campaign. If it is a workshop campaign, get rid of those default campaign statuses of sent and responded, and add the following, the ones that you learned about from your yoga teacher or manager: invited, accepted, attended, and no-show. Okay, so now I know where to write the code in my sandbox or in a developer org. I've gone through some of those great tutorials on the SFDC 99 site, and I know other resources I can use to help me out. I have an idea of what I want my code to do. I've written it out in English, and I thought about what should happen when. So I guess it's time to start coding. I'm going to start by doing a search to see if there's some sample code out there that somebody already wrote. And if I find it, maybe I can copy and paste it. That sounds like a great start, Veronica. Get in touch with me if you have any more questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste, Veronica. Setting. A few days later, another Google Hangout.
Okay, so Ashima, I did a Google search, and I found a post from someone who needed to do what I'm trying to do.
That's great. A lot of times, you can spend a little time searching, and you'll be able to find some code out there. You can use that as a starting point.
Okay, I don't really understand the code, but I remembered what you said about just trying things out. So I went ahead and I copied and pasted the code that I found into my new trigger. Can you explain what some of these things mean? For example, what is trigger.new?
Sure. Trigger.new is a collection that holds all the new campaign records that were just inserted.
Wait a second. All of the campaign records? I thought we were just creating one campaign.
Yeah, but think about a data import. When you upload a bunch of new campaigns with the data loader,
Oh, right. I hadn't thought of that.
pretty much every trigger will follow some version of this pattern. Using trigger.new or the trigger.old collection, looping through the collection, and doing something with the records in the collection. In your code, you're looping through the collection of campaigns that were created and adding new campaign member statuses to each one.
Okay, so back up a second. You said that there's a trigger.old collection too?
Yes, that one is the one that's used in updates and deletes. It holds the old version of the records that were updated or deleted. Trigger.new holds the new versions.
Okay, so I know I'm not going to understand all of this at once, but I really want to just test it and see if it works. How can I do that?
Well, you've saved the trigger. Go ahead and create a new campaign in Salesforce and check the campaign member statuses.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to try that right now. Hey, it worked. Kind of. It looks like it added some new statuses, but those aren't exactly the ones that I want. And also those default statuses that come with Salesforce, sent and responded, those are still there. I don't want them.
Well, let's tackle those issues one at a time. Let's go back to the code and tell me if you can find where you might change what those statuses say.
Oh, hey, I see it right here. Those are the statuses that were added that we saw. Attended enthusiastically, attended reluctantly, did not come. So can I just change those to be what I want?
Give it a try and see.
Hey, this is kind of fun. Oh, but wait a second. They only added 3 statuses, and I want 4. Can I just copy and paste that code?
Now you're getting the hang of it.
Oh, and look, there's an explanation right here within the code in English of what's happening, looping through the trigger.new, which statuses they're going to add. That's really helpful.
Yes, those are comments. You definitely want to get in the habit of using comments within your code to explain what's going on. It will help anyone else who happens to look at your code, and it will help you when you go back to look at your code you wrote a while ago and can't remember why you wrote it. Take the time to do it. Believe me, you'll thank yourself later. Just use 2 forward slashes before any comment you want to make. That will let the compiler know that it is a comment and not code that it needs to compile.
Compiler? What's that?
Basically, a compiler turns a language into what a computer can understand, sometimes called machine language. So it's like a translator.
Okay, I think I understand.
Okay, now remember the pseudocode we wrote? I'll put that into my brand new trigger as comments to give me a starting place to structure my code and remind me of how I want the code to actually work. So let's go back and look at your pseudocode now. When you look at your pseudocode and the actual code, what do you notice?
Well, I see in our pseudocode we have add the following campaign statuses, and I see where in the code that's happening. Hey, do you see how I updated the labels for the campaign member statuses? Invited, accepted, attended, and no-show. And I updated the comments too. I'm pretty proud of myself.
You should be.
But what about the rest of the pseudocode? It says get rid of the default campaign statuses. Is that in our code somewhere? Because I don't see it. Oh, right, that's what we saw when we tried the code out. And I created the campaign. Those default statuses of sent and responded were not deleted.
That's right. There's no code to delete those yet. So those statuses showed up when you created the campaign. Do you notice anything else missing?
Well, the pseudocode also says check if it's a workshop campaign. But I don't think that's in the code either, is it?
Good catch. See, the pseudocode can remind you of your requirements.
Okay, it's kind of making sense. So can we add those missing pieces?
Yes, and I happen to have a version of the code I think will do the trick. Let's take a look at it. Okay, now notice that the very first line of pseudocode was when a campaign has been inserted. Here's what that translates into for a trigger, after insert. You define when you want the code to run. Other events you might want to use are after update, before delete, before insert. As you get more familiar with triggers, you'll understand when to use the different events. Next is checking to see if it's a campaign, workshop campaign. Here's where we're doing that.
Okay, I can see that. It looks like you're checking the record type ID to see if it's a workshop campaign. I guess that makes sense. So what are all those lists and sets for towards the top of the code?
Oh, that's a great question, Veronica. That's another common pattern you'll see in triggers. Lists and sets are collections. They're used to hold records that you're going to process. In this trigger, we're going to have a list of campaign member statuses we want to add. That's the first line you see there with the name CMS to insert. We have another list of campaign member statuses to delete. That's the second one there. That's CMS to delete. And finally, a set of campaign IDs that we call workshop campaigns. Don't worry too much about these details now. They'll become more familiar to you as you practice. And remember the website, sfdc99.com? It'll explain a lot of these details and give you lots of ways to practice. For now, you just need to know that you will likely use lists and sets in your triggers.
Okay, so what is that part there that says system.debug, we added this campaign for processing? What does that do?
System.debug is a really helpful tool. Anything you write as a system.debug statement will get written out to the debug logs. It's a great way for you to troubleshoot what's happening in the code as it's processing. In this example, for every workshop type campaign that is created, there will be a line in the debug log that says, we added this campaign for processing along with the campaign name.
Okay, so where are the debug logs?
If you go to the setup area and type debug in the search, you'll find them. They're in the monitor section. You need to set up the debug log for yourself by clicking new in the debug log area and adding your name. Once you do that, your debug log will be ready to go. Then, after you create a campaign, you can look at the debug log and find your debug statement. Let's go ahead and create a campaign and then take a quick look at the debug log that's been generated. This is a snippet from the debug log. Looks like he added a workshop called How to Be a Zen Goddess. I totally want to sign up.
Me too.
Okay, let's finish looking at the rest of the code. I've added a section to delete the default campaign member statuses right before you add the statuses you want.
Okay, there's like a lot of details that I still don't get, but I kind of get the general idea of what's happening. This is great. So I have one more question about the code, back to those lists and sets. So there's a list CMS to insert. So it looks like you're adding the new campaign member statuses while you're looping through those workshop campaigns. But then at the bottom, it looks like you insert them again. So what's that about?
That's a great question. So inside the loop is where you want to put things into your collection. So our CMS to insert list. We're not actually inserting them into Salesforce yet. The collection is just a storage place to hold all the records we're going to process. Then, after we're done going through the loop, the insert statement in the bottom is where we actually create the records in Salesforce. This is another important design pattern. You generally want to do your inserts, updates, and deletes outside of any loops. Otherwise, you can run into some errors that are called governor limits. Again, don't worry too much about it now. You'll get the hang of it with more practice.
Okay, yes, there's a lot to learn, but at least I feel good about getting started.
Yes, there is a lot to learn, but you are off to a great start. Here's some of the key things we talked about. In the majority of triggers, you'll be looping through trigger.new or trigger.old. Use collections to hold records you're going to process. Do your inserts, updates, and deletes outside of the loops. Be sure to comment your code, and you can use system.debug and the debug log to see what's happening when your code runs.
Thanks, Ashima. This has been super helpful. So now that the code's working, can I just copy and paste it into my production org?
Oh, if it were that easy. There's still a few more steps to learn before you deploy your code to production. First, it's important to test it, to have your users test it out. I'd recommend asking Etta and Zola to log into the sandbox and make them go through the steps of creating some real campaigns, because you never know what users might uncover.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. So after they test it out, then are we ready to go to production?
Well, not quite yet. After they test, if they find anything, then you need to revise your code, and then you need to ask them to test it again. Once they agree everything's working well, there's one final step before deployment, and that's called test coverage. You do that with something called test methods.
That seems like a lot of testing. Seems a little overboard to me.
Well, it's actually really important to test your code, as this is running real time in your database. So you notice when you created a campaign, your code ran immediately. When you create test methods, it helps catch any potential problems. For example, if you introduce a new package or a new code to your instance, it might interfere with this code. The test method can check to make sure your code will play well with other code, and it can also help catch errors in your logic.
I hadn't thought about that. I guess testing is pretty important.
Yes, I highly recommend reading up on testing, just like you've done here with your coding. Take a look at the sfdc99.com resource again. There's a section on testing. Also, the Force.com Apex Developer Guide offers some great suggestions.
Okay, so after I do all of this, how do I actually deploy?
First, read up on deployment using the resources we've talked about. We can do that together later, but I'd suggest trying to test it out yourself first. But remember, you need to test with your users, revise and test again, and then write test methods. The deployment is really the last and final step. I'll help you with that if you need it, but you maybe realize that you can do it yourself. Look how far you've already come, Veronica.
I am starting to feel more confident. It wasn't as hard as I thought to at least get started. It's great to have a sandbox to try things out, and the resources you've given me have been amazing. I hope that some of the gaps get filled in as I continue to practice.
That is the key, Veronica. Keep practicing. Keep writing code and trying new things. See what the errors are and see if you can figure it out yourself. You did a really great job, Veronica, and with very little help from me. You're on the right path on your journey. Once you get the code deployed, I need some help from you with a report I'm trying to create.
What? Help from me? Don't you know it all?
Not really. I know some things, but I don't know enough about analytics, and I hear you're the guru with that. So when you have some time, can you help me?
Of course.
Great, Veronica. Namaste.
Namaste, Ashima.
Now we ask you to take action as beginning coders. Today, go get your developer account. Find a mentor to help guide you, as I did for Veronica. Introduce yourself to 3 people today who may become mentors for you. Visit sfdc99.com website and start the beginning tutorial. Finally, celebrate the beginning of your journey. So,
Thank you so much for being here.
and now the cast has time for a few questions.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, there's a couple of mics in the middle. You're welcome to stand up and ask a question.
Or not. Yes.
Yeah, can you
grab
go to
the mic
mic
over there?
so we can hear, so everyone can hear?
What?
If there's a mic right in the hallway, in the aisle.
This is possible.
Can we
You're
turn
not-
the mics on
Can
in
we
the
turn
middle?
the mics on? Please? Is it on?
I don't know.
Oh,
yes,
there you
I
are.
would say so.
Okay. Yep.
So if I wanted to write a trigger on a campaign, I imagine it's possible, but so I have a telemarketing campaign, and when somebody logs a call, I don't want them to have to check, change the status in the campaign. So I imagine you could write a trigger that would change and say that it was called. I could see that as really useful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Basically what we just showed you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There does happen to
But
be.
because it's on a different object, you know what I'm saying?
It's on the campaign, is what you're saying.
But I mean, it would be the log a call. It'd be an activity. I
Yes.
want it to change the status of the campaign if they called them.
If they called, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do that. Yes, you can have triggers that trigger on and then do
On
something
different
from it.
objects.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions? Or as I said, or you don't have to ask any. It's not a requirement of Dreamforce.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You may have already said it, but will the presentation be available?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. If you're on the chatter feed for this presentation, we're going to post it as a PDF file. Yeah, and so all these will be available, but feel free to write them down or snapshots of it, pictures of it. Yes, it will be on YouTube. That takes a little more time, though, from what I understand.
Yeah.
This chatter feed for this presentation, there's
We'll have
Yep, it'll have the
PDF.
PDF. Yep. For this presentation, so the 5, what is it called again?
triggers for admins. Yeah. Yeah, if you go to sessions. And, yes, Nancy.
Nancy.
Can you,
All right, so she said, when we did a Google search for the code, what did you search on, is what her question was.
right.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I would search on add campaign member statuses, trigger, Salesforce.
You don't even need
Yeah.
to write Apex. I think you can just do
Yeah,
that.
you can try, if you put in Apex, you put in Salesforce, code, trigger, campaign member statuses, like that, you'll get a lot of hits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just kind of look, yeah, it's a great question.
That
Just
is
kind
a
of
good
think of the keywords, and if your first search doesn't return any results, try again with something else.
Different words. There's a lot of code out there, so.
Yeah, a lot.
Well, thank you all for listening. If you don't have any more questions, you can book off to your next presentation.